to see some familiar faces. I'm curious though, how many are from San Lorenzo Valley? Oh, good. All right, so anyway, my name's Jim Coffis. I am the human behind the SLV News blog and Facebook and Twitter account that some of you may be familiar with. Others may recognize me because I've lived here in town for 30 years. Some know me as the lucky husband of the beautiful Vicki Neville, who's and still others might know me because my two sons who went to schools here are now performing artists as the Cannabis Brothers, and they that's who I am. Now, how I got involved in this project is interesting. I've been a unabashed advocate of cannabis for over 50 years, and I'm also been a student of politics for 60 years. And a couple of those years were spent in the university studying political science, and then for the last 50 years it's been as a student just like the rest of you. So politics has always been an interest of mine, and probably the two things that I can say with certainty about politics are that number one, it involves people. You need votes in this system. And number two is money. You need money. So those two things, votes and money, is what politics is all about as far as I'm concerned. And particularly when you have a special interest issue like cannabis is. Now, I'm going to just give you a real quick history of the politics of cannabis hereabouts. So, Proposition 215, some of you probably voted in that. It was a measure that was put before the state of California that asked if medical cannabis should be made accessible to Californians. And that passed overwhelmingly throughout the state. In Santa Cruz, it passed with over 70% of the voters saying yes. So 20 years went by from the passage of 215 until this past fall, when the legislature finally, after 20 years, took it up and wrote some rules about how that would happen. How would people get access to cannabis? So for the intervening 20 years, the way they got access was the way they always did. Although in more recent times, some localities, San Francisco was the first, followed by Berkeley. Santa Cruz was one of the pioneers in establishing a dispensary or collective model that made it a little more accessible, made it easier for people to get. But now, since they passed these rules, all the local jurisdictions in the state now have to either pass their own rules or be subject to the state rules, or well, they can do two things. They can pass their own rules. They can ban it completely, as some counties have, or they could write, or they could just allow themselves to be subject to the state. Now, in Santa Cruz, we had an ordinance that was passed in 2014 that provided for some structure, but it was kind of ambiguous. It didn't permit the growing or sale of cannabis. It just kind of, you know, gave a wink and a nod and gave you something called limited immunity. If you were arrested for breaking the law, which the law is no sales of cannabis, if you were arrested for that, you could use this limited immunity in your defense. So that didn't seem to work very well, and nobody seemed to like that. The sheriff didn't like it, the county council didn't like it, CAO didn't like it. So they brought it back to the Board of Supervisors to try and change it. And what they ended up doing was deciding, well, since it doesn't work, let's just ban it completely. And so they did. And so a couple of months ago, the Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 to ban the commercial cultivation of cannabis. Now, they didn't ban the sale, the dispensaries. They kind of did another wink and a nod saying, yeah, well, you guys can figure out how you get your product to sell. But pretty quickly, they started, the sheriff's office started raiding local growers. And, you know, people wonder, well, what, you know, what are the rules? And nobody could give them a good answer. And so a number of local organizations got together and said, this isn't right, and passed and created a petition, passed it around, got 11,000 signatures, which were sufficient to put that ordinance on hold. The County Board of Supervisors then was faced with a decision. They had to either come up with a new ordinance or put that ordinance, put that ban to a vote of the people. They decided not to put it to a vote of the people. They decided to rescind it, and then we're back at the old ordinance. Quickly after that, after they rescinded that ordinance, they decided to appoint a committee of citizens, 13 of them, to come up with recommendations for a new ordinance. So since September, this committee has been meeting every week, and they're getting close to making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Now, we've got a number of the members of this committee in the audience. Maybe all of those people who are on that committee, if you'd raise your hand so people can see you. So you can look around. There's one here from Bonnie Doon. There's one from Aptos.
And the facilitator.
And the facilitator, the county was, you know, they were so invested in this committee that they hired a consultant to facilitate the committee's work. They also assigned a member of the CAO staff who's been running the meetings, and they've done a lot of work. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through the state law and why it, you know, how it affects us. And then after that we're going to hear from Eric Hammer and Kim Salmon, who are two of the San Lorenzo Valley residents who are on this committee. Eric was appointed by Supervisor McPherson as his representative, and Kim is a representative of the Santa Cruz Mountains for Sustainable Cannabis Medicine. So the first speaker is going to be is going to speak to the California law. His name is Sasha Brodsky. He's the counsel to the Cannabis Advocates Alliance, which is a grassroots organization that's started in Santa Cruz that has been organizing and getting people together, and he will tell us about the state law. Sasha? You want to sit or stand?
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everybody. So let's see, where to start. First of all, welcome. I wanted to orient this group in a general sense to what the new state laws look like. So just recently, Governor Brown signed a comprehensive body of laws regulating cannabis as exhaustively as possible. And that's in response to the federal statement that if the states regulate the field, feds will back off. And we hope that that's true. So one of the key features of the new state laws, in addition to the fact that it regulates pesticides, labor, and applications, people with criminal backgrounds have to be cautious about applying everything that you can think of under the sun. There's a multi-agency approach. You've got about 13 regulatory agencies that are being deputized with the task of regulating and developing regulations over the next 2 years in line with the skeletal framework that the state has currently provided. There are some things that are going to interrupt that possibly. There could be some statewide initiatives that change or enhance or specify more narrowly or limit what the laws say that they're going to be now. And also, as these laws unfold in their application, they're going to change. And one of the key themes of tonight's meeting is to educate yourselves and get involved, because you really have to become legal cannabis nerds if you want to get into this business. You have to know how to operate, how to obtain both a local license as well as a state license, and how to comport yourselves. It's a whole new orientation. Everyone's been operating in the dark under the framework of a very loose collective system, and that's essentially being abolished. So the collective model, which is the essence of Prop 215 and SB 420, that's going away entirely, with the exception of a very limited type of collective. I like to call it a pseudo-collective, because if you can qualify for personal grows, the state allows you to have up to 5 grows, 1 for each patient, up to 5 patients, as a provider of medicine. And you can do that without a license. The fact remains, though, that the locals have to approve of that, and the locals have the right, as they always have had, to either ban or severely limit. The locals can't be more liberal than what the state says, but they can be more restrictive. And so we're in this interplay of local and state. And so one of the main features is this dual licensing system. So you need to obtain a local license first before you even apply to get your state license. So this is one thing that you need to know. Another feature of the system is the various licenses. Okay, so I've got a flow chart behind me, which in a very simple way talks about not all the licenses in exhaustion. There's about I would say 14 different licenses or so, depending on how you define license. But in a general sense, I'm going to show you the flow here. I'm going to take the mic like a good MC. So what we have here, can everyone see this chart, more or less? I'm going to identify the elements. So big picture, you've got cultivators and manufacturers at one point. Let's call this point up here and this point down here. Cultivators up here, manufacturers down there, okay? And then you've got the dispensaries, which are the essential end zone for cultivators and manufacturers. To get to a dispensary, you have to go through a distributor/transporter. You do have the right, at least according to the general laws that the state is guidelining us, you do have the right to contract statewide, as long as the locality permits it and as long as you've jumped through all the hoops. You do have the right to contract with dispensaries, and I believe with manufacturers as well, if you're a cultivator, for instance, and vice versa. But you have to go through a distributor. And the distributor is a kind of quality control entity and they interact with a testing. So testing is an essential element of that, and transportation is another entire license unto itself. And there's a very complex web of restrictions on if you hold, well, first of all, you can't hold more than, in most instances, you can't hold more than 2 license types. You can have multiple licenses, but you can't have licenses in more than 2 categories, all else being equal. There's a couple of exceptions to that. But basically, you have to go through a distributor no matter what. And the distributor is a kind of quality control, testing, inventory. It's a stopping point that allows the opportunity for the state to step in and see what's going on. And it's a stopping point that I think people have accurately described as a kind of chokehold on the industry. But it's what we have right now, and we need to understand it in order to even decide whether we're for or against it or what we're going to do about it moving forward. So that's the general flow. Does anyone have any questions about this particular flow? Not licensing questions. We're not going to get too deep into that tonight.
Who's going to be the distributor?
Good question. Good question.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, who's going to be the distributor? I don't know that I have a satisfactory answer, and I don't know if anyone else here does. Do you, Mr. Monavar?
Actually,
And can we introduce Mr. Monavar? I don't know if Ryan Monavar is the head of Normal Monterey. He also sits on the board of CAA. He's also a documentarian and filmmaker, and he's my go-to guy for all things nerdy and cannabis. So he's a know-it-all, but he's a very humble one, and he's going to speak to this issue of the distributor. Who decides who the distributor is?
Okay, that question is quite complex in itself. Actually, keep in mind, as a documentarian, and I go around, because I've been shooting this documentary on legalization in California for the past year, and before that I was working on even in Michigan, actually on a statewide legalization campaign, so my experiences are kind of insane. And because of this, I go around the camera and I actually harvest all this information. One of the best explanations of what a distributor is probably going to end up looking like actually came out of the C4 meeting. There was a presentation put on by a gentleman, and he showed the comparison of what the alcohol industry looks like as far as the distribution mechanism. So a lot of people are absolutely terrified by the idea that there would only be maybe 2 distributors you could go through to get your product. But at the same time, a lot of people are looking at their businesses in a very small, like microcosm of what the business is going to turn into as you upgrade and expand into the future. So right now, for example, a lot of cultivators may be selling their overages to 6 or 7 local dispensaries. But as it becomes legal in a much broader spectrum, they're going to be basically able to distribute to 1,000 dispensaries around the state. And at that point, most companies don't have the logistics or infrastructure to actually handle that simple process of getting this stuff out to these people. So the distribution model on some ends looks scary, and on the other ends, it's an incredibly efficient way to move your product. Granted, they're going to take a cut along the way, and the real reason why all of these types of licenses have been broken up is so that the state of California and the Board of Equalization can basically tax you at every single step. The idea that they have is because it's going to protect the environment, the children, I don't know, stop global warming, perhaps war. But in reality, it's just a taxational component. And they like to say get away from seed to sale, but I mean, the tracking mechanisms, they're all going to be built in along the way. And there's still a couple of types of licenses that haven't hit the floor yet. And in addition to that, there's still time local counties can actually put in their own specialty types of permits. And so Sasha was absolutely right. If you don't have your local permits figured out and approved, you're not going to get anything from the state. It's a combo. You need both of them. So the distributors, who's it going to be? It's probably going to be somebody who's already connected and deals with, 100 growers and picks up huge quantities and has it in some giant warehouse somewhere with a little refrigerator controlled sections for their edibles and everything else on the side. So that's who I imagine a distributor is going to be. And there's like maybe 10 of those in the state right now, and they'll end up merging up. So it probably will end up looking like 3 or 4 major distributors. And it's not the most efficient business model. I mean, shit, look at Amazon. So.
And really, tonight's meeting is a call to action. It's a call to action to become involved. Not only go to canadvocates.org, which is the CAA website, which is a kind of forum for participating in your local cannabis groups, but also to not only show up at the physical meetings, but read articles that are posted on the site, contribute and comment and interact with people. You can do it yourselves. You can create your own trade societies, get involved with SEM Squared, Monterey Normal, for instance. You need to engage, and that's what we're really inviting you to do. This is an epic opportunity to become involved in governance. We've got the C4, which is also a fantastic opportunity for everyone to tune in to what's going on. It meets every Tuesday at Simpkins Swim Center from 9 to 2 or so. And again, it's a cross-section of what's going on. And so really rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty with the facts and the laws and starting to think about what you want to do in the future as we move from this largely nonprofit collective model of producing and cultivating to a for-profit model that is the new paradigm. And it's heavily regulated. Everything from the environment, pesticides, water use, to labor, which is a very important component of it, and all these limitations on licensing. So which Ryan's about to speak about in a minute. One of the things to really think about now is, what's my current business model? Do an inventory of your current business, if you have one. And I kind of verboten, you can call it a business at this point because it's supposed to be nonprofit. But really, do an inventory of what you're doing right now and develop your vision for where you want to go in the future. And as long as you've got an understanding of where you stand right now in relation to both local law and state law, and then you develop a vision for what you want to do in the future, in the new paradigm, and you sit down with an attorney and maybe with some consultants to map it out, that's a good start. So really, thinking about what do you want to do? Do you want to manufacture? Do you want to cultivate? Do you want to be a distributor? Do you want to have a nursery license? Do you want to have a dispensary? These are all serious considerations that deserve scrutiny and a kind of realistic thought about whether it's appropriate for you to invest your time and energy moving forward. So I'd like to pass it over to Ryan to speak a little bit about the various licenses and some of the restrictions. We're not going to nerd out too hard because we've got other people speaking and we've got a limited amount of time. Really, you need to sit down with an attorney and get a private consultation for the real thorny questions. But there's going to be a lot of questions, and there should be. You should have all kinds of questions raised as a result of what's happening right now, and you really need to get involved if you want to survive. I really strongly encourage you to support SEM Squared and CAA, canadvocates.org. We've got meetings every first Wednesday of the month, and there's a lot more to come. So Ryan, if you'd like to speak about the licensing system briefly.
Okay, this is one of the most complex, weird moments in the history of our entire movement. And the only way we can even try to begin to understand this stuff is we've been circulating a lot of infographics that are out there that you guys can find. This one basically breaks down all the types of licenses in a grid, and it shows you how much the square footage is, what type of lighting, some restrictions, the availability of transport. And we have a couple of others that also show how they actually start to interact. And it's going to get even weirder as things come up because there's going to be a lot of people that lobby for very specific and tricky types of licenses. So the first three are basically cultivation. That covers indoor, outdoor, bags to lighting. It goes anywhere from 5,000 square feet to technically half an acre to an acre, depending on how you look at it. Then there's another type of license which is known as a 10A. It's on the other side of the spectrum. That's known as the 314 model. That's basically 3 dispensaries, 1 type of manufacturing, be it an M1 or an M2. The difference is non-volatile solvents or volatile solvents. We'll get into that in a second. And then the 4 is 4 acres and 8 22,000 non-consecutive plots. And I think the math on that, roughly an acre is like, what, 44,000 square feet, so it's like around 176,000 square feet. So just play the math game with me just for a second as an algorithm. You can argue about how much a yield you get, because some are much better than others and some are not so good. So let's say you had a 1,000 square foot grow. You could probably do maybe 60 pounds out of that 1,000 square foot grow. Well, if you got 176 units that you could use for that, that's a shitload of weed you can produce. So the thing is, this is kind of a civil war between the old school mom and pop growers in the hills and new large-scale industrial corporations coming in. They're coming in a big way. Last week, I and a couple of other people I can see in the audience were actually in Vegas for the 4th Annual Marijuana Business Conference. And the two biggest things people wanted to talk about, especially from outside of state, because there's a lot of friends back in Colorado that were born in California, moved out to Colorado, made a shitload of money, and now they want to come home and set up shop here because they see things happening. And what they're most interested in is the manufacturing 2 type of license. I'm going to explain why in a second. And then the labs and packaging. The biggest sponsors at the actual conference were primarily packaging companies from the Midwest. Most of these cats, they didn't know shit about weed. I mean, some of them don't even smoke it, but they see the opportunity. And one of the things coming up is the Type 8 license. That is basically an analytic license for a lab. The way the laws are written, though, your product has to be tested by a lab, and then if you're going to end up redistributing it back to the public, it has to be packaged on site so you don't break the chain of custody. Just like if you were to have like your yogurt in a little container of Yoplait, and it's got to have all the stuff on the side label, it's got to be done at the facility to make sure that it isn't violated or tampered with or altered in any way. Now they say they do this because of safety, but honestly, 85% of the packets you're getting right now are prepackaged on a shelf. And the way they're looking at M2 licenses, if you have 176,000 square feet that you can actually grow on, and you're turning a cycle every 90 days, that means 4 times in a year, that's an extraordinary amount of weed that you're producing, and so much so that you're not going to be able to distribute that as the flower. Even if you're sticking in little jars and curing it as much as you want, it's not good enough because there's going to be so much out there. So the next logical thing they do is skip out on the whole trimming armies that'll have to take care of this if it was going straight to bud, and process it as an M2. So an M2 is hydrocarbon extraction, volatile solvents, and that's basically explosives and flammables. And by the way, CO2 extractors, the definition, the classic one of an explosive is a rapidly expanding gas, and if you put that in a container or a vessel of metal, when that shit blows up, that's basically a bomb of shrapnel. So that's why it's basically going to get lumped over there as well. M1 is like water hash, dry ice hash extraction, keef, sifts, a couple of things like that. But at M2, the point is, you process this stuff down, you turn it into your concentrate, and then you sell that, in essence, as an additive. So take a look at the way this country handles sugar, all right? The entire Midwest, this is where I was born in Nebraska, it's just farms, they're super lazy, they don't even name them anymore, they just give them numbers, okay? It's like farm 74, farm 75, you keep going, it's like farm 862, they don't care. And what they do is they produce corn. Corn ends up turning into high fructose corn syrup, and it's basically an additive to all the food products you have. If you go to a supermarket right now, even the healthy ones, 85% of those packages on the shelf basically has sugar added to it. Well, that's going to be the same mechanism they end up using in about maybe 5 to 10 years of how they're going to justify putting this stuff on the shelves. It's going to be cannabis infused, non-cannabis infused. And the cannabis infused are going to have a bunch of different terpene profiles that go down the list, so you get whatever flavors you like. Well, if you do that with the way things are going in certain areas, such as Santa Cruz, and Frenchie, actually at the Cali Dep Fest talked about this, you basically have appellations. There's a unique set of characteristics in the climate, the weather, the soil, everything that goes into the actual production of this stuff, if it's an outdoor grown product, that you guys can hold on to and claim basically as a trademark. And that's a fantastic thing, because at that point, Santa Cruz can actually produce quality weed as opposed to quantity weed. Keep in mind, I come from Monterey County, and the way we're looking at it down there, 10-acre grows. Like, how much can I grow on 10 acres? So if you can actually only grow 4 acres worth, oh, fuck it, I'll do it, that's beautiful. And then, of course, they will, and they're going to mass produce bulk concentrates. In this area, if you guys hold on to the actual flowers and have the highest quality product you can from that, that's fantastic. And the types of licenses, like all these ones coming up, I don't know too many plots that are going to be able to go for, in essence, half an acre's worth of a grow here. There's a couple of places that can do it, but not too many are going to get that. And the greatest type of license that anybody wants to get in the entire state right now, in fact, people outside of the state, is that 10A license. 3 dispensaries, 1 type of manufacturing, and 4 acres worth of grow. Because then, in essence, you're not wasting money buying from middlemen. But what you are going to get middlemen on is basically the transporters, okay? You're all going to have to go through that. You're all going to get taxed. A lot of you are going to bitch about it, but that's pretty much the way it is. And then with the distributors on the other end, it's going to be just a couple of large groups that actually handle that. So, and by the way, most of the time I'm behind the camera, so I'm generally asking questions. That's generally how I like to work. So if anybody has a question about these types of licenses, I mean, can we open it up for like just 5 minutes? Well, or do you want to like hold on to
I'd
that?
like to hold it.
Okay, cool. Yes, okay, so there's a lot of crazy stuff happening with the licenses as it is, and I'm sure we're going to get into it in a second.
So real quick, just to resonate with the theme of the French wine industry and the appellation, the idea here, the term appellation is naming. Appellation contrôlée means naming control. It's like controlling the name. So what does that mean? That means that here in Santa Cruz, in the Santa Cruz soil, you can actually only claim Santa Cruz if it's from here. That's in the new state law right now. The opportunity right now is to go outside of whatever legal limitations there are operating within the law, and to develop our own standards for the highest quality cannabis possible. And the vision, it's not my vision, but I support it. It's Frenchy Cannoli is one of the people who's really made it popular, is to emphasize quality over quantity and to really make that what you're all about. So, you know, here we are in Santa Cruz, a very unique topography, and actually you're going to see a lot of limitations on what cultivators and manufacturers can do. And with that in mind, with probably a lot of strict limitations on what the state law is giving wide berth for, you want to think small scale. We want to think artisanal grows. We want to think CSAs and possibly a farmer's market. We want to, again, emphasize quality over quantity, and what are those standards for quality? What are they going to be? How are we going to decide what the best really is? It is developed through consensus. So as part of this call to action, what we're also calling you to do is start to think about and talk about and engage on how can we, assuming that most people here, if they're in the industry, are the smaller players, how can the smaller players really distinguish themselves? Well, one of the answers is through the local brand and emphasizing quality, organic practices, so on and so forth. So keep thinking about the wine model as something to seriously consider, and definitely get involved with canadvocates.org. We're actually throwing a fundraiser on the 27th in Capitola at the Sandbar. There's some flyers in the back and a big poster, and we invite you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. And let me just briefly tell you what we're going to try and do here. So we have 3 members of the C4, the Santa Cruz County Cannabis Choices Cultivation Committee. Should be 6-4, shouldn't it? But anyway, they're going to speak next. And then we have some cards in the back that you can write questions on if you don't want to come up to the microphone and ask them. After the 3 speakers from C4, then we're going to ask you to make your statements and tell us what you think. And that's why we're holding all the questions till the end. So the next speaker is a member of the C4. Most of you know him. He's a lifelong resident of the San Lorenzo Valley, graduated San Lorenzo Valley High School, and the elected member of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District Board. And we're lucky to have such a strong public policy advocate living and working for us. Please welcome Eric Hammer.
Thanks, Jim. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. We put together a community meeting, a group of us, about 6 months ago, down in Felton. And we made a promise to this community that we'd come back out again in search of input and also information that we could provide. Through that meeting is one of the reasons why I was lucky enough to actually be Bruce's. He reached out to me and allowed me to be his voice in this community, to bring back recommendations from our community to him and to the board. That is what C4's directive is. And you can see, this is our light reading that we do. And we get stacks that big every week before our meetings. My intent for this meeting tonight is twofold. One, we want to give everybody here an opportunity to speak again about their concerns and what their needs are in this community. I would imagine by looking out here, we're divided amongst who's here today. We've got those that are in the industry, and we've got those that are concerned about the industry. And both needs need to be addressed, and the concerns on both sides of the issue need to be addressed. And I've spent quite a bit of time in the last year and a half, and especially in the last couple of months, reaching out to both of those sectors in particular. I spent some time up Deer Creek, I spent time up Tubar, I've been up to the top of Las Cumbres looking down on top of everything. I've met with neighbors and growers and manufacturers. I spent 3 days in Vegas taking a look at where this industry could be going, and some of the concerns that were actually talked about here. You know, Sasha talked a little bit about is what the growth in this industry also can be if we don't have the right regulations. The difficult part is coming up what is the right regulations for our community here. We're unique, we're mountainous, you know, and we're not going to see a 10,000, nor do I want to see a 10,000, this is me personally, want to see a 10,000 square foot grow on the side of the mountains. It's not the right spot for it. However, we've also got huge agricultural lands that are throughout the county too that actually can handle something like that. And how do you go from an area where you've got small farmers and an industry that its economic ability or its economic force in Santa Cruz is unreckoned with? And right now it's an underground economy. When this economy comes above board, you know, the impacts that it's going to have to our community can be huge. So we don't want to throw that out either and just put this ban like the ban that's out there now. I think it would be crippling to our community to have that. So the 13 of us are tasked with taking in all the information for the entire county of Santa Cruz, put it all together in one lump package and say, hey, here's our recommendations. We're looking at neighborhood concerns, and this is access, smells, fire. The number one concern that I'm hearing out there from a lot of the neighbors is fire. You know, we live in, right now, a really drought-dry area, and the concern for fire is huge. And when you read about the papers, you read about the bus, what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot of illegal wiring, you're seeing generators that are out there that aren't being properly done. One of the things that we're looking at as a recommendation for that is what's called a third-party inspectors, to where with this licensing is going to come a lot of rules, stringent rules. And if you abide by those rules, they're going to provide a safe workplace. You're going to have fantastic best practices. In fact, if we get our way or I get my way, we would be an innovator and leader in what those best practices can be. You know, it won't, yet they don't have to be such a cost issue that it drives all the small farmers and underground. You know, we don't want that either. We want everybody to have an opportunity. One of the issues we have is we're being fast-tracked. There are some policies that have to be done by a certain date. For us, our date is December 8th. And that is because it takes a certain amount of time to put together a recommendation to the board that is publicly noticed, that gives all of you an opportunity, and I hope you come down, to talk to the board about what you like and don't like about the suggestions that are out there. It has to be reviewed a couple of times and then brought back. And it has to be approved by March 1st in order for the state to recognize any type of licensing scheme. So, I mean, I can talk forever about neighborhood concerns. I can talk about how the industry, you know, is feeling like they're being picked on. But what I really want to hear from you tonight a lot is, what is your major concerns? If you are, I'm hoping that people feel comfortable speaking freely here tonight. I know that law enforcement has been an issue for a lot of those that are in the growing community or in the manufacturing industry. They have come down really hard, but not any harder than we had expected them to. And I need to be really clear about that. There was a group of people, I was part of SCM Square, who put together a ban that overturned the ban. And when you overturn a ban, people are going to get upset by that. And one of the things that we said is, we like your old policy. Stick to this old policy. You know, so what law enforcement is doing is they're sticking to that old policy. Sometimes there's some areas of gray, and people are concerned about that. I know a lot of people have been hit by that. But this is also part of the process. So give it time, give us time. So when we open this up for questions, please try and keep it a little bit brief. Some things we can answer, some things we can't. What C4 has done, and what I have a lot of faith in, is we brought in a lot of cross sections of this community to present to us. We had some fantastic presentations from youth concerns, from neighborhood concerns, from big corporate monopoly marketing campaigns that could be coming in to sell us products. But we need to know this. We need to set a policy that allows us to have control locally. We have to have local control. That's the one thing that I'm taking very seriously. And as I came back from Vegas, thinking that, oh my God, this industry is amazing, it also has a way to really impact Santa Cruz County in a way that I don't want to see it impacted. So I am very supportive of the industry. I want to see it grow. We have some of the best innovators in the state. Actually, we have some of the best in the nation here in Santa Cruz. I don't want to see them driven out. I want to see them grow and prosper. I also want to see the concerns that neighbors are bringing up addressed, and the technology and the ability is out there. And with strong regulation, good licensing practices, we have the ability, I feel, to have a very lucrative environment without degrading our community at the same time. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm available anytime for questions and concerns. I think that's Kim. You want to? Kim sits on the commission as well. She has another set of principles for me. I just wanted to reach out and talk to the community and say, hey, come talk to us, and we want to help you out.
So Kim is, there are 5 representatives on the C4 that were from industry or groups, and Kim is the one from the Santa Cruz Mountain Growers group, and she is a Ben Lomond mom, a homesteader and educator, and her voice, she was one of the first voices on the committee to really get them to focus on what would be a best practice model. And so she's been very active and very a strong representative for you.
Thank you. I'm not used to microphones, so bear with me. I feel like it's quite an honor to be on this commission. At first I was really intimidated because there's so many great movers and shakers and talented people on it, and I thought, you know, I'm just a mom in the mountains, but I'm just really honored to work with all of you that are here. And I really feel like there's a diverse group of people that have come together, coming from all sides, and really listening and understanding everybody's perspective in this to make it right for Santa Cruz. So I just want, you know, to put that out there, gain your trust. It is working. Some of us are going to have to give up more than we want to. There's, you know, I don't like to say that we're making compromises. The last ordinance was a product of compromise. I think this new ordinance will be a product of collaboration and taking everybody's needs into account. So with that said, we work very hard on what it is that is Santa Cruz. What is it? What is our personality? What do we value here? Why do we live here? what is it we want here and how do we want this industry to be? And we came to the very quick conclusions that our directive is to how do we protect our environment, how do we protect degradation of neighborhoods, how do we protect our youth, how do we protect cannabis patient rights, and how do we protect the small businesses that are already here working and using good practices. So that's what we're working on right now, and taking that and how can we grow with the future, because this changes coming down the road, as you can see, are really overwhelming, and it's like, woo. So we really do have to band together as a group, and I'm gonna harp on this again. Please sign up with one of the groups, get informed, know it all, ask us questions. The more questions I get, the more questions I ask. There's so much to know, and we're just trying to sort it out to make it right again for Santa Cruz. We started off hearing testimonies from all sorts of committees and groups of people, from fire, I'm just going to read them because I can't remember them all. Building departments, planning and land use, fish and game, watershed, state water quality control board. The C4 cannabis advocates of 5 that are on the committee got together and did a Cannabis 101 presentation so that some misconceptions could be allayed and put aside, because some of this we felt that was being presented didn't really reflect the reality of what grown cannabis is in a small scale, best practices way. SC Labs has not come yet, right? No, that's right. Americans for Safe Access came, and some local cultivators and dispensary owners and industry leaders have all presented to us. The members of the committee have met away from our 6-hour sessions every Tuesday, and we've gone on field trips, we've interviewed people, we've reached out to the community, we've formed subcommittees, we've talked to neighborhoods, we've gone to neighborhood meetings, and a group has gone out and consulted with the sheriff. These meetings on Tuesdays are open to the public, and we invite all of you to come if you have that time in your schedule to do so and listen. There's always a place for public comment at these meetings. In lieu of that, we're reaching out here today, and anything that you say when you're in the microphone, we will be taking back to that meeting in an appropriate form to make sure that your voice is heard at the commission. Right now we're at stands. We haven't made any decisions. However, we have identified some opportunities for consensus. We are working on that. And the big 3 are, we want to encourage everyone to work towards a legal business. And this is to lay the groundwork for what's coming down the pipe with the state and all of that. So really protect yourself, get yourself in there, make sure that you have your stake is being protected by figuring out what you want to do, as Sasha said, getting legal advice and setting yourself up. We absolutely have an opportunity for consensus on wanting it to be Santa Cruz local control rather than state. So we are working on setting up a permitting scheme, licensing scheme, and getting that in place. We can't go into details now. However, the state starts at 5,000 square feet. We're looking at a scheme that allows for lower than that, so that family farmers will be taken into the fold. And we're including everybody in the small best practices in the mountains as well. We have the opportunity for consensus to remove the 99 plant count limit and work on a square footage model instead. We have the consensus, or the opportunity for consensus to create a permitting system and to create regulations for the different tiers of permits and licensing, and to make them known and educate the industry on what those will be, and to be able to help guide you along in the process, to getting a license somehow, somewhere along the line. We also have the opportunity for consensus to drop the out-of-county or the in-county rule, to understand that growing, you do provide in-county, but that we also need to be able to open up to other dispensaries and across the state, and I'll leave it there for now. We are working toward a tiered license schematic based on size and type of grow. We're working on where and how much is allowed in certain areas that meet environmental requirements and neighborhood concerns. We're looking at residence requirements on grows of certain sizes. We're looking to establish best practice guidelines and understanding that the tenets of best practice guidelines will differ for outdoor, for mixed light, and for indoor. We're looking at tracking requirements, we're looking at labor requirements, we're looking at a third-party certification program, we're looking at a local distribution model, and we're looking at how to educate the cannabis community and the community at large. And in conclusion, I want to say is that we're all in agreement on we want to keep it local, we want to keep it sustainable, we want to keep it Santa Cruz. And we're also really looking at, this is probably a different committee, but what Sasha was talking about in branding and having an appellation for Santa Cruz Grown and forming together to have a co-op of growers and a farmer's market that protects us. And by coming together, we can be a strong entity. We won't be the big, corporate growers, but by coming together, we can be that. We can be strong. And we can represent Santa Cruz in a very safe and sustainable way. We have recognized that there is a cannabis culture here. There's a good one. There's also a bad one. We want to make it all move into the good. And a lot of this, everybody else has touched upon, but there's genetic research. We have the technology in the capital. We have an environmental ethos, and we are like the homegrown capital of organic farming and everything. We really want to push that, and we would like to be as strong to be up there with big business that will go on in surrounding counties. And with that said, we want to be able to do all this and do it in a way that is gracious and respectful. There are people who are not as down with what we're doing, and we want to be able to become respectable in this as well. So our practice is, and we need to show everybody that we can do this. And we do not want to have any nuisance in neighborhoods. We do not want to have any environmental degradation. We want to protect all of that. And we do want to protect our youth. And so we're looking at education systems for all of that, for the industry leaders and for the neighborhoods as well.
So I keep forgetting to mention, there's forms on the back table where you can leave your name and an email address if you choose, if you'd like to stay in contact with us. If you don't want to leave your name, there's a few questions on this that we'd like to get some answers to. So if you would at least do that, and there's a box back there that you could leave the form, that'd be great. Oh, and also, I told you, votes, people, that's number one. What's number two in politics? Money. And there's a jar in the back. You can put your $100 bills in that on the way out. Okay, we need, this is going to be a long battle. The first fight is in 4 weeks with the Board of Supervisors, but it's going to continue for a year or more. Now, our next presenter is another member of the C4. He is a lifetime Santa Cruz County guy, and he was the founder of the Cannabis Advocates Alliance, and has been a well-known activist and supporter of cannabis medicine in this county, and we're lucky to have him come here to speak with us tonight. His name is Patrick Mallow.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, and I'm one of the co-founders, not the only one, of the CAA. Thanks everybody for coming out here. I was at the last mountain meeting, I think, almost a year ago, down in Felton that you guys put on, and it was a really electric moment, and brought the community together. So hopefully we can continue that here tonight, and I'm going to keep it as short as possible to leave more room for discussion and hear what everybody has to say. But basically, my perspective as a community member and someone on the C4 is that we're blessed to kind of help out the transitional moment that we're in right now. And what we're transitioning from is an unregulated market that, even though it had beautiful, beautiful aspects to it that everyone in this room can talk about, it also had very, very tragic consequences for the people involved in it sometimes and the communities that this stuff was happening in sometimes. And so what we're tasked with doing and lucky enough to do is to be able to give a solution to both of the unregulated problems that are associated with the people who are involved in the industry or involved with the plant, being at risk, not knowing if their investment or even their little personal garden is going to jeopardize the other things in their life. And so what this has done, talking about we're going into this new regulated model, is that for better or for worse, we're going to start to get some solid ground to put our feet on from the industry's perspective, which is beautiful. If you're not involved in the industry and are worried about some of the other problems, or if you're involved in the industry and worried about these other problems, we're going to have an opportunity to transition people out of the regulated market and into a regulated market, and hopefully in that process, with providing people a path to compliance, we'll also be able to make sure that any of the things that were issues, as far as it happening in places it shouldn't happen, as far as it happening in ways that it shouldn't happen, destroying the environment, just having a negative impact on the neighborhoods that this is going on in, is something that we can help with proper regulation put an end to. So, but it's not an easy job, right? And so what we're stuck in between, kind of with Santa Cruz, is this old model that didn't really work for all the reasons for everyone involved, and this new model that we can just look at and say that that is probably not the model that works for this county, right? And so our job is to find the good parts of the industry that we love, the good parts of the community the things about the community that we love, and find a way somehow with local regulation to fit it into this new state model in a way that creates something that this county and that the people of this county deserve and that need, right? So if we take a look at if we understand that the problems that we're facing today, either as industry members or community members, are the problems of the past and the problems of an unregulated market, and then we can go together towards this solution that is not this, but something that we can make fit into this to work for us, right? And so the good thing is that we have this C4 committee. We have this beautiful population of organized people inside the cannabis community and out, all working on this problem together right now. And the other good thing is that the county is aware of it and has brought the December 8th date up to give a draft ordinance first reading, and so they're dealing with these problems too. The other good thing is that the state is in the process of fleshing this out. This was legislation that was passed, and where it's now going to go into the hands of the regulators who are going to write the regulation for this, which is going to end up being a big fat rule book and is not written yet. So we can all get out and influence our state representatives and try to make it so that locally we can have a little more room to play in here. So what I envision, and it's not just me, it's a community vision, and I hope it's really simple and everybody is along with it, is that we don't want a big industrial model of cannabis, and we can't frankly compete on that level, and we also don't have the proper resources for that level. We don't have giant tracts of farmland like Fresno has out in the sun where it's dry and you can just do it cheap, cheap, cheap. But what we do have is this name, this culture, this community of talented people, and this community of supporters. And what we can do with that is frame, like Sasha was touching on and everyone else, some sort of Santa Cruz brand, some sort of standard, where we're going to separate ourselves even further than we're already separated now, as far as being the leaders in quality and innovation and the brain work and the creative work and the diversity preservation projects and the breeding and all this stuff that we've been doing for 30 to 50 years already, and that is our cultural heritage. And it's also our only shot to fix the problems that are happening right now, is by taking the entire small industry that exists and offering a path to compliance. And a word that I didn't say, I forget who did, but it was said yesterday, is kind of the motto I'm thinking about now is compliance together, right? And I don't just mean the cannabis industry, I mean the whole community needs to come behind a program that we can believe in and have faith that this is going to get us away from the problems of the past into something in the future that can work for everyone. And I don't have to tell everybody, but this industry, unregulated as it is a major, major economic force in town, in a way that normal people have been able to stay in this town as it gets more and more and more expensive. And that's probably just going to keep going. And so what we need to do is understand that this unregulated market, the money that's here in town, is it's going to eventually transition into this regulated market. And there's no reason that that money is going to stay here unless we develop something to be able to replace and keep that money. So it's essential, because if we just try to fit into this as it is, we're not only not going to fit into it and have all the problems of the unregulated gardens, because they're going to keep doing it regardless. We need to put them into a place where they can have a better option in the compliant model. And we're going to have this if we don't create something better, and this isn't going to work for here, so all the big companies and the people who are in town now are going to move to other counties where this model applies better, and we're just going to lose out on all the economic activity that we already have right now, we all already depend on. So it's essential for everyone here, for the community's health, that we transition that economy into a regulated economy. And so my vision for that, really quick, is smaller. We have some recommendations that we've been throwing around in the C4 committee that we need smaller licenses than that 5,000 square foot one that Brian talked about, because there's a lot of people who in these mountains or in this county that a 5,000 square foot license is not what they need. It's going to be too much of a burden to jump through the state hoops to get that, and that is probably not going to work out as far as the community and having that size of a garden in those areas. But there's a lot of places where a 1,000 square foot garden might be appropriate, or 2,500 square foot garden might be appropriate. And so we're having ideas of more specialty, smaller licenses in town. And then we also have the idea that if we can get a third-party certification system that has high enough standards to make sure that no environmental or community impacts are happening, but then also sets this new brand standard that you got to get over this bar with quality and best practices, and that can actually increase the value of our products in the future when this model is plummeting the rest of them. And so my vision for the town is I want most cannabis products in the future are probably going to go down in price drastically. But a small percentage of them, through telling the proper story and the proper branding, are going to go up tenfold. So I want to see the products of these mountains being sold for more than they are today, because they're recognized for the world-class product that they are. And the way that we get that is by designing an industry that is consistent with the model and values that we have for town. So we want a very small model that can be repeated as many places as we can with the highest standards for quality. And then we also need, and to get it back and I'll end with this, we need to somehow figure out this aspect of it for ourselves, because we need some sort of cooperative distribution model where the farmers of the hills can take their products in the small batches that they would never be able to survive on their own with, and get them to these distributors or this distributor that is then able to push the Santa Cruz brand and the Santa Cruz products out to the country and, or, state, country, hopefully world. And I'd like to thank everybody. Hopefully I didn't go too long and said I'd talk short, but I didn't. But yeah, and I want to hear from all of you.
Now, the last speaker scheduled is going to be Robert Zaremba. He's a Moment businessman, and he was the founder of SCM2. So, Robert.
I don't know about you guys, but I heard banjos back here. I was about ready to push a paddle somewhere. Okay, hi, I'm Robert Zaremba. I'm one of the board members for SCM Squared. Basically, we are a grassroots organization for us up here in these mountains. And our number one goal is to make sure that each and every one of you, or as many of you as possible, we can get registered, licensed, compliant, and operating together in this county as one. Because, let's face it, the way these new laws are going to be, the way the big business is going to come into the state with the new licensing, you're going to have very large business people that are going to be coming into this state, operating very large farms. And here in Santa Cruz County, we are not going to be seeing that kind of licensing for competition. We are going to be set back to smaller artisan farms here throughout the mountains. So the most important thing we can do to survive up here as a group, we can all make sure that we are all compliant, as many of us as possible, and then that way we can push forward with a name together and as one as the Santa Cruz Mountains. All right. How do we do that? Of course, come join. We're going to fill out the form. We can email you guys, keep you all informed on what we're doing. As these laws change, we want to make sure that we keep you guys informed about the new laws. Work with you individually, one-on-one, to how do you get yourselves compliant. The other things we can do is we can help bring in the union into this area too. Part of the state law that nobody really talked about is that anybody with more than 20 employees, it's going to be required by law that your business will have to have an agreement set up with one of the local unions to allow them to come in and organize your labor force, which I think that's a great thing. One of the things that unions can do for us here as a smaller artisan growers, they can actually put a lot larger power behind our voice and help push legislation to help protect our industry in our county. As a matter of fact, we got Getz and Garcia over here from the UFCW. If you guys want to talk to them later tonight, they're over here. You can introduce, we don't have them speaking up here, but they're just here to see what we're doing here in the community, and they'll be here to help us get organized here in the future if we need them. Okay, but I'm the last speaker, and we're going to get you guys going on forward here if you want to ask questions, or mainly what we want to see come from you guys is to make statements about what you want to see these people from the C4 do for us, for our regulations here in Santa Cruz County. What things work for you, what things do not work for you, and it's important you get your voice out because we're getting to the very end here, the very end of the actual writing of these regulations. And so you need to get your voice heard, all right? Thanks for coming.
Okay, so we have a microphone here. We'll put this microphone down here. If you want to come up and just speak, I think that'll be the easiest way to do this, okay?
We know you guys have questions. Don't be shy, please. And statements, we need your input. What you're worried about, what you're scared about, what you're happy about, what you think will work.
I own Central Coast Wellness Center in Van Loman. I think the biggest issue that we have is the distribution point. That's a question that I brought when we first walked in the door. I would say the distribution to run from our county into retail is what our most important thing is going to be. We want to be able to sell across state lines. We want to be able to really get our product out there in an organic fashion, and that is what we are known for. That is what I think the biggest issue on the state level and that we discussed today is going to be. How are we going to be able to avoid the distribution that is happening in the state of Washington right now? They're running like the state liquor authority. there's no way that you can actually have a private liquor store in the state of Washington. You have to go through distribution, then they go to a state-run retail outlet. That's the biggest problem that I think we're trying to avoid. If we can keep it to that point here in the mountains to where we can avoid having to go through the distribution point, I think we'll be in much better shape.
Hi there, I'm a local patient, and one of my main concerns is patient access and patient availability. Not really all these businesses at all, to be perfectly honest, which seems to be the key focus of this talk. Seems like their interest is in legalization and sales and business lines and bottom lines, and that's what what Prop 215 and what we're trying to protect has nothing to do with that. That sounds like legalization and a business model. What we're trying to do is protect people's access to medicine. Medicine, not something that you really want to be trying to make your living or make off of a sick person's back, in my opinion. The model that made it so great here in Santa Cruz is WHAM. I think we all need to take a look at that and know that that's what we're really trying to protect. Patient access. Farmers providing for patients without this crap. Yeah. That's where a lot of we need to honor the folks who are growing collectively or cooperatively for locals, because that's the simplest access for sick people, first and foremost. Then we can worry about all the local businesses who've tried to cut out all the other people in the mountains so that they could have total control here in Santa Cruz, which inspired this whole hot mess by working with the Board of Supervisors to try and create some sort of rules. My big questions, and I hope you don't mind, these are less for your C4 group, but more so for Ryan and what's going forward here. Everything seems to be focused around AB, what the governor voted in. But there's multiple ballot initiatives working in California to legalize cannabis, which will change AB 266, this entire structure. Why are we working to set up a structure that could be tougher for medicinal farms to function than a large-scale corporate farm for recreational use? That seems absurd to me. So I think we want to look at this and realize that there's massive change, a giant tidal wave, if you will, and we're kind of like kicking the waves under the pier, focused on trying to control something that seems way bigger than what, and so I asked this question kind of with the intent to try and say, we need to be very, very conscious of how we try and control the medical cannabis in Santa Cruz County, because legalization is coming soon, and we don't want it to be worse than what it's going to be everywhere else, and take away something that's really precious to Santa Cruz. And I also wanted to touch on, for the C4, the tax money from Measures K and L that's coming off the sick people's back. Can we put some of that back into research and development for these sick people?
Wait, you want me to answer that?
I would love to.
Okay, let me hop into that for a second.
We want to keep the answers really brief. We want to give people an opportunity.
Okay, Brett's actually a friend of mine, and he's awesome. And the event he put on Cali Dev Fest was fantastic. Right now, how many square feet can you grow legally in Santa Cruz County as a caregiver? 100, right?
100 per square.
Right. The new law says you can grow up to 500 for 5 people. As far as big money and big business coming in, that's the nature of business in this country, unfortunately. This is a capitalistic society. I mean, I don't even consider this a government or a republic. I mean, this is not a country, this is a corporation that we live in, let's face it. And that's just the natural evolution of how this is going to come. And as far as keeping this is already happening. I mean, the governor has signed off on it. You have a couple of options. If you want to go maybe the route of Mendocino and declare your local area completely independent and almost a sovereign nation in itself, you could try that, and it might work. What were some of the other questions real quick?
It was basically around the local, the statewide legalization kind of changing this whole model or being more liberal than the medical distribution model.
Well, that one's even tougher in a weirder sort of way.
That's a year away.
Yeah, but what's going to happen is, I mean, right now medical was the introductory for this. I'm not going to lie, I didn't get into this for medical reasons. Is my roommate and I sitting around like 7 or 8 years ago, and we just wanted to drop the cost of our weed, so we started picking up, and then we got a little bit more, and then we started selling some. And I got into it for recreational. And this is before anyone ever even showed me any of the data for medical. So as far as protections, I don't think anyone should go to jail for this plan, period, for any reason. That's just me, and it's not because I want to knock on medical, and wham, I mean, they set the standard for how to do things back in the day. And a lot of other cooperatives that have trouble with trying to get into play, if they don't adapt and grow fast, they can still have their own for their own personal sake, but big business, I mean, we can't fight them. There's just billions of dollars. We can hopefully craft legislation along the way. And as far as the new bills coming in, which are going for recreational, that's just code for large-scale cultivation business. That's all it is. I mean, if you look at the size of this, 4 acres for medical, that would technically drop the cost of flower drastically because there's going to be so much. And as far as this whole concept of black market, even if you legalize here locally and at the state, the black market in this country still exists and thrives greatly because you go through the Midwest and the East Coast, it's predominantly still legal. So this is going to be another 6-10 years before this gets to hopefully some model where you don't go to jail for it, you can grow your own, and the alcohol model where you can't even brew your own still in your house is kind of a weird concept in this country still, but that's the way it is. And it's like fighting gravity at this point, I'm sorry. So.
We want to try and we want to hear from you. So, is there anyone else that could like to speak? Can you come up?
I'm not a grower, I'm just a community member and cannabis medical patient. I've been to a bunch of these C4 meetings, even though they are really early on Tuesday. You should all come out. I mean, they're really informative, a little dry, but really good information. I've been working on that for you. It's not your fault. I've been seeing a lot of the wording of like the black market and whatnot. I don't know what that really means exactly. I know Eric Garner in New York got choked out for allegedly selling the cigarette. I know the sheriff's been raiding a lot of people in the county. So I want to know where the line is. I want to know what black market exactly means. I don't know if that's state or county or where that language came from, but I'd like that addressed. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, and let's face it, you know, a lot of these people here are my age or a little younger, a little older. I kind of expected a younger crowd, but you know, I think there's a real opportunity just from a business standpoint. But the distribution model, I mean, everybody knows if you're growing outdoors and you're tending those babies, and then you've got it in the baggies, and let's just say you didn't sweat it out right, and you pass on your 10 pounds to distributor, and they don't open the bag and get a little of the moisture out, and it molds. Okay, who's liable for that? The distributor? I mean, or all of a sudden, are they going to pay you when you pass it? Are they going to pay you when you pass it on, and then it's on them? You know, so there's a, you know, I think that has to be looked at because that's quality control, and that's a difficult thing, as people probably here know.
I'm a patient and a small-time cultivator from Boulder Creek. My family's been here for a long time. My mom was a cultivator. Back when it was illegal, there was no medical, so yeah, and I like to see it small-time quality rather than quantity for Santa Cruz, because I think that's what we pride ourselves on here, and that's just what I would like to see. I do agree with this because it is inevitable. I just want to see it work, that's all.
So I got a question, who's gonna stop the big money, and this is for the state guys, who's gonna stop big money from getting all the licenses? It seems like, at least the model that's put up, it was stated that you can only obtain 1 or 2. So who's gonna stop the big money, Philip Morris, RJ, and the like, from being able to get around that legislature and get all the licenses and shut everyone down? Who's small time? And I agree that quality certainly is better than quantity, and no matter what, I don't think the big guys are going to be able to make it big and make it good. It's going to end up being like Marlboro cigarettes with chemicals in it, and who wants that, right? Thank you.
One of the ways that small people can fight big business is by being organized. And that's what you're seeing here. So keep that in mind. There's strength in numbers, and if we can get together on the same page, we can make a lot of things happen. Anybody else?
I live here in the Valley and I'm a nurse, and he brought up a question about, which I think is important, is that we take, since we're going to be taxed obviously on our grows, that some of that money goes towards ensuring that our patients get affordable access to their medicines. And how do we continue to ensure that? I mean, it's an art. Not all pot is the same, and it doesn't heal the same. How do we ensure that we're at the forefront of that? And that, because if you commercialize something, it's like cheap vodka. Anyone can go to the store and buy a gallon of vodka for $5, and we want to ensure that patients are getting the medicine that they need for the symptoms that they need. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So far, the county tax has raised $1.8 million. By the end of the fiscal year, they're looking at about $2.3 million.
So more than twice what they thought.
Almost.
That's why we're all getting busted.
I'm a cultivator. I got cut down this year. I came to this meeting wondering, when am I going to be able to get a license? You said you guys have to have something in there by March?
No, December 8th.
December 8th, but I thought you said it had to be finished by March.
For the state licenses.
Correct. Well, so what I want to know is, what is compliance now? Because I got cut down last year and I was compliant. So I invested time, money, energy, not just me, there's other people, and everyone's walking away kind of upset. So what am I supposed to do this year until there is a license? Because it's not going to happen by next grow season. I can't see it. I can't see the regulation being there and being legit by the time for me to pop seeds. So what do I do? Where am I at?
Those are great questions for the C4. There's such ambiguity currently right now. There's such ambiguity, nobody is without risk right now.
Just to answer some of the questions, one thing I'd like to say is those of you who are speaking tonight are brave, okay? And the other thing I'd like to say and emphasize is community. Okay, this process right here and the C4, this is what you need to become involved with if you want to move forward. And finding out what the laws are is one part of it, but getting involved in your community is critical. And having the bravery to come forth and show yourself to your community is a risk. But it's a risk worth taking, especially if you are informed. Not only your own research, but sitting down with an attorney, finding out where you stand in relation to 7.126, which is the local county ordinance, and really mapping out what your compliance picture looks like right now and what it might look like with a future paradigm. And Brett, I think to partially answer your question, first of all, you're not alone in mourning this new model and a loss of the collective, because the collectives are essentially being abolished. But within the 5-patient limit, there are opportunities. There are local opportunities to say, okay, what are we going to do with a 5,000 square foot grow? Where can that happen? Under what conditions? We can all start talking about these pseudo-collectives. They're not real collectives, but they operate like collectives. We need to have that conversation and start talking about it. And as John Getz from UFCW said, you know, the distributor transporter it's a choke point. It really is. It's a way to control this whole thing. And so with these stringent limitations, you know, you got to look at state initiatives, and you got to look at what you can do at your local level to try and mitigate against some of these influences. And having good local policy is a really key starting point.
And I've been active in the cannabis movement for a while, and thank you all for having this. Thank CAA, thank RCSC, C4, all the groups. We're a strong movement in Santa Cruz, and I just wanted to alert you, we're doing the California Hemp Initiative. I've got copies here. We are full legalization. We're non-corporate legalization. The big money's coming. They're going to start petitioning soon. They want to make Colorado. They want to make a 6-plant, 1-ounce initiative. It's funded by Monsanto, George Soros. It's funded by Sean Parker. It's funded by the Drug Policy Alliance, who are the people that want to legalize all drugs. And it's funded by Marijuana Policy Project. They're here to create a Colorado model to lubricate this lame MRSA or whatever, it's like a disease MRSA that you get. So, we don't need this corporate BS. We don't need this MRSA stuff. So we can eradicate, eviscerate, destroy it politically. So we have the copy of the initiative. Please sign it. We are the California Hemp Initiative. We have through April to get on the ballot. Well, we already have 200 activists throughout California circulating the petition. We are unstoppable. We need money. But please make sure you sign after this wonderful meeting, and I'll pass these around. We're a statewide initiative. It would basically say 12 pounds is decriminalized, and 99 female flowering plants. You can have as many non-flowering. And we're here to make cannabis just like the beer and wine industry. We can open up cannabis bars, hash bars. So please check us out if you're not familiar, and definitely sign. We're all volunteer. So we're, you know, a strong grassroots movement. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for all y'all for coming out, and Brett, thank you for inviting. But all these us around us, please make sure to sign.
So also there is a signature drive and CAA fundraiser coming up on the 27th at the Sandbar in Capitola. There's some flyers up here. I want to say Chris Carr, I don't know if he's here right now, but he's got a radio show every Friday, 1080 AM KSCO at 8 p.m. every Friday. Worth listening to, very informative. Also want to thank Joe Kirkpatrick from National Stock Signs, provided amazing signage. Thanks everybody.
We're not done yet.
Yeah.
We've been hearing some from the industry, which is great, because it's the first time people have felt comfortable enough to come up and speak publicly. But I also know that there's a lot of concerned neighbors here. I know them personally, and we want to get those concerns up on this board as well. I mean, this is going to live forever. We're going to be able to take the suggestions that come from you, take them back to the meeting, and try to make them stick. So please come up and talk to us. We won't answer any more questions tonight that you have. If you have direct questions, come talk to us afterwards. From here on out, what we're going to do is hear from you, write some statements, give us your questions, we'll put them up here, and then we will definitely talk to you. Thanks.
I'm a patient and an activist. I'm also a board member for Monterey County Normal with Ryan. And I just feel obligated to share this little bit of information with you that will help you understand where that language of the distributor and transporter stuff came from. About a year and a half ago, when I was working at the Capitol to try and stop SB 1262, which then turned into AB 266, I was traveling and I did a road show, and I met a high-level executive from a armored car company. And he runs his trucks up and down Colorado, and he picks up product, takes it to the labs, and delivers it, to the dispensaries. He has been trying to get language written into the rules for at least a year and a half now, and he's been pumping a lot of money into it. I believe he continued because I don't think that he just dropped that money and went away. And that's where I think this language is coming from. Once I understood that, it makes sense. It also helped me when I looked into what Colorado did about that to make it better. I don't think this is going anywhere. I think it's very well funded. But what Colorado did was they required them to hire veterans. If this was going to be part of the business model, then they wanted to make sure that vets got those jobs. So it's something to consider. What else you could consider is creating a smaller type of company like that. If you want to do this, you're going to have to try to compete with them at a local level, so maybe creating a smaller armored car business. But I just thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you. Like Eric said, we'd love to hear from people that have specific concerns that they want addressed.
I would like to know what's going to happen with the water situation. I'm in the woods, and we collect water in the winter and store it. And right now I'm concerned that they're going to say punch a well, and even if I get a well, that there's not going to be enough water in that well. Will I be able to buy my water? This is probably the thing that's concerning me the most.
There's been 10 meetings of the C4, and at many of them, we heard hours of testimony on the environmental degradation, the problems with neighbors, the odor, the noise, all kinds of different things. I'd like to hear at least one complaint out of this group. I know you guys, it's pretty mellow up here, huh?
I don't think any of them came tonight.
I'll complain. I'll do both roles. We had a neighbor that actually came in and basically cut off the top of the mountain so he could have, probably 20 people up there each doing big grows, and he took 50% of the profit off of them, and the county should have been in there regulating the fact that he basically chopped the top of the mountain off. That wasn't a cannabis issue, that was an environmental issue, and grading is illegal in our county to do that kind of thing.
Anyone?
I'd like to say something if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I'd like to touch on, for the C4 and the committee, there's no regulation around pesticide use. All the clubs are selling poison clones. All the local clubs selling medicine are selling poison clones so they don't have bugs on them. No regulation around that sort of stuff, and the grows in the mountains actually causes real community danger. So I'll be the first to say that with proper regulation and bringing all the growers into the light will make a safer town, safer streams, safer parks for all the kids. So if they really care about the parks and kids, open it up so the growers can come into the light and that we can get regulated and the poisons can't be used and the dangerous wiring and electricity and generators and things can't be done, because that's how you stop those things. And one other thing I'd like to add to the C4, if we're coming up with licensing and rules and regulations, why don't we open up the permit process again to allow for people to come out and start deliveries or collectives or different things. We have a moratorium on the collectives unless you're involved or tied in with the community. You can't seem to be able to get one. They've got it all capped out. So maybe making it easier for everyone to come out and have a new opening that they could provide where people could come in and try and set up collectives again would be an opportunity for getting people to be able to come out and not be in the black market.
Thank you.
I live in Bonnie Doon, and I want to say that I feel like the biggest sucker tonight for coming up here, because if you really wanted to hear the neighborhood perspective, you would have had a different kind of meeting. Okay? Because nobody from the neighborhoods is coming up, and why? Because this was a call to action meeting for growers. So we don't feel very comfortable coming up tonight to tell you our story. So I'm doing it because I think it needs to be told, and I think, Eric, you did a terrible job of getting people to come up and speak tonight. I really do. But I'm going to keep going. Because my neighborhood has been severely impacted by grows. I'm not anti-pot, be it recreational or medical, but I'm anti my neighborhood being really affected. I have a street of about 38 parcels. Right now, this is the best of my knowledge, there are at least 5 grows on my street. About 2 years ago, there was 10, and they have gone with various degrees of drama, everything from foreclosure of the property to people being taken off the property with restraining orders and things like that, to a huge bust at the end of my street where 3,600 plants were taken out. I have 5 people growing, 4 on my street, 1 caddy porter right around my neighborhood within about a 1,500-mile radius of my house. The odor goes without saying. It's really a pain. But I haven't seen personally, but my neighbors have given me very credible reports of selling happening on my street. I have 3 young kids between the ages of 10 and 14. I don't feel as safe in my neighborhood having them wander around. It's just, well, okay, so the other things that have happened, 2 of the growers are on my electrical transformer. My transformer has gone out twice in the last 2 years. And on one of these same properties, the guy actually doesn't have metered power, so he steals it. And he steals it from one of the guys who's also a grower and doesn't report him. That property had a fire in the last year and a half. So the fire concern is very real. This guy is also a nasty player, and nobody wants to talk to him. A lot of my neighbors, we have kind of band together and talked to each other, but we're afraid to talk to these people because some of these growers are not nice. Maybe you guys here are all the nice growers. I hope that's true. And I hope that you actually are true to this. Let's really help the neighborhoods. People have said that tonight. People of the C4 have said that tonight. And I really want to turn it around to you as the growers. Because what you're risking is, for people like me, you guys have used the term normal people. I think I might fit that definition. You're taking people like me, who I've grown up being, I would say, an ally. I'm not a user, but an ally to cannabis. You're taking people like me, and I'm really changing that perspective here. I'm not happy with it, and the level that it's around my neighborhood, and this idea that growing in mountain soil is a good thing in a neighborhood. It needs to get out of sort of street and zoned areas. So the other thing is there's a couple growers on my street that are the poster child for everything that could go wrong with guard dogs, kids being in situations with families where they're growing and it's not a healthy environment. I've seen a lot of really bad things on my street. And I guess I want to turn it around to you in the community to not just go, oh, there's neighborhood issues, and oh, there's environmental stuff, but really we care about our bottom line and our business, because I think if you don't address those, there is the silent majority that is generally fine with cannabis, but we're not fine with our way of life being impacted and our neighborhood safety being impacted and selling in our neighborhoods. So please, I think these problems are solvable, but you have to actually address them. You have to address the abuses of these personal grows and the 99 plants and stuff. They're real. And I want to turn it all around to you to be part of the solution to this neighborhood problem.
Thank you. Anybody? Well, thank you for coming out there. We've got 5 minutes or so, so if you want to hang out and ask some questions individually, do that. Otherwise, please leave your name and email address so we can be in contact. And thank you very much.